How was the Iroquois confederacy structured? We have already an understanding of what this amazing leader Hiawatha did to help structure the Iroquois confederacy by bringing all of the different nations together. We've already been learning about him. He's a pretty fantastic guy. For your post from yesterday, the ones that I've already seen come in, they're supposed to include a visual representation, okay? Because this is a travel journal or you're making the diorama, I would expect there to be on this page, which should have the learning outcome at the top. How was the Iroquois confederacy structured? Some people have asked me, does this have to be 1 page or 2 pages? You can choose. It's up to you. I think probably 2 pages might make sense because a lot of people have already done their work on 1 page. So maybe on like the other page, somehow write on this as the title. It can go wherever you want. And then there does need to be 3 images, okay? And these should be the 3 things that really stand out on your page. So when you flip back through it, it's not just all this writing. So that won't really make very much sense to you because our brain does a way better job of remembering things when we're able to see pictures. So Hiawatha, please include a drawing or somehow an image of Hiawatha, okay? And then I was even thinking like what you could do is like out of his mouth, hi, I am Hiawatha, I am the blah, blah, blah. And then like, I believe in the fact that there should never be war and we should have peace with all the nations and everyone should be brought together. So that's kind of one thing that I would like you to include that, okay? I'm not going to ask you to resubmit it, but when you're putting the new post up today, which will be of the 5 nations, I would like to be able to see that you have done an edit to your work that includes Hiawatha, an image of Hiawatha, okay? So then today, what you need to do is include an image, something kind of like this, which shows the 5 nations. It does not need to be exactly this. You could use other visual representations to show the 5 nations. Maybe you want to show 5 different people, 5 different chiefs. Maybe even wanted to show the wampum belt, which does represent the 5 nations joining together. So it's your choice, but I am going to be looking for that, okay? And then tomorrow, we're going to be doing the Tree of Peace, and then we'll be done how the Iroquois confederacy was structured. Okay, we've already done this. Okay. And then now we're doing the 5 nations. Okay, so while you're watching this is going to be for the RA level. Which 5 nations accepted the peace treaty? Okay, so if you just list them, oh, this is their symbol that you could use to show this. Who is this? Who is this? Who is this? Who is this? And who is this? Or on the map, who are each of the different nations? Okay, that's the basic level. A CA would be in what order did the 5 nations join? What was preventing the last nation from joining? So maybe you want to do a little number. Like if this was the first nation to join, you maybe put a number here. Or you could even do like start and then do like a little like sequence of arrows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was not right, but just something kind of along those lines, okay? And then what was preventing that last nation from joining? What was their block? Why was that happening? And then an E would be who were the keepers of fire and what was their responsibility? What were they responsible for doing? This could be in your textbook and it's also in here. Okay, so we're going to watch this video. Not all of it, just part of it.
It's hard to manage your workload, especially when your team doesn't know who's working on what.
That's true.
3 nations had now agreed to join the Great Law of Peace, but there were 2 more in the peacemakers' sights, the Seneca and the Onondaga. Both were powerful nations, renowned in war, and they had every reason to reject a peace that asked them to lay down their weapons. War might...
Oop, that's partially answering the CA level.
...come at a great cost, but it also kept them safe from their enemies, and it gave them power. The Seneca had more warriors than any other nation, including the Onondaga. They had battled Tadadaho many times, repeatedly checking his ambition with their own. But he was far from their only enemy. They fought many wars outside the 5 nations which the Peacemaker sought to unite, and to support those wars, they frequently raided their neighbors. Many of the envoys who now followed the Peacemaker had suffered or lost loved ones in Seneca raids. Hiawatha and the Peacemaker came braced for an argument, but they were greeted warmly. The Seneca had already heard of the peace treaty. Jigonsase, who was Seneca herself, had sent her own messengers explaining the principles of righteousness, health, and power that had convinced her to join the Peacemaker. Aside from 2 chiefs who lived to the far west, the Seneca were ready to accept the treaty. But those 2 chiefs had the most warriors, and the most reason for not accepting the treaty. They lived on the border. A peace treaty among the 5 nations would protect the chiefs in the interior, but not them. If outsiders came to threaten the Confederacy, they would be the first to fall.
Interesting.
The Peacemaker called together all the envoys to discuss what they should do. None of them had participated in a council like this before, so at first it was chaos. Everybody talked over everybody else, and when nobody could be heard, they all grew angry. Egos swelled, and they began to hurl insults at each other. They swore that they could never work together, and threatened to return home, call up their warriors, and take to the warpath again. The Peacemaker refused to let his life's mission be torn apart in an afternoon. He sat the envoys down around the longhouse fire and declared that they must behave like brothers. The Mohawk and the Seneca were the elder brothers, who sat on one side of the fire and considered new proposals first. If they approved, the issue would then pass to the younger brothers, the Cayuga and the Oneida, who sat on the other side of the fire. And when they took turns like this, everyone's voice would be heard. In short, he established a bicameral legislature. There was no place yet for the Onondaga, so Hiawatha sat with the Mohawks. It had been years since he'd left his homeland, and since he had joined the Peacemaker, the Mohawks had welcomed him as one of their own. Now, his place among them allowed him to be one of the first to review new proposals. He quickly helped to resolve the matter of the 2 Seneca chiefs to the far west. The Seneca would be honored as keepers of the western door. The Mohawk became keepers of the eastern door. When strangers approached, the keepers would be the first to judge them, and could call up the warriors from all 5 nations if they thought it necessary. But their first responsibility would be to offer peace to all who came, and welcome those who accepted it. Only those who refused the offer 3 times would be met with war. The chiefs accepted this, and the Seneca joined the Great Peace. Then Hiawatha made another proposal, one that he believed would convince Tadadaho to accept a treaty and join the final nation to their cause.
He's still
Debate
causing
raged
problems
around the fire, but Hiawatha urged them all to keep an open mind. They had secured the eastern and western doors, but there could not be peace among them as long as the Onondaga, who lived in the middle, did not accept it. So the council put its faith in Hiawatha's plan. They all returned to the Onondaga together and met with Tadadaho. His temper flared when he saw the envoys from the Cayuga, whom he had so often bullied, now apparently joining forces against him. Even though he knew he was outnumbered, he immediately rose from his bench and threatened to crush them all with war. "We have not come for war," Hiawatha said, "but to make you an offer. We want you to be the leader of our council." Tadadaho sat back down.
Can you believe that? Even though he was the person who was so against them and they were all kind of afraid of him. Could you believe that proposal? They wanted him to be one of the leaders.
Down. This was Hiawatha's suggestion. Hiawatha said, "But to make you an offer. We want you to be the leader of our council."
Wow.
Tadadaho sat back down. This was Hiawatha's suggestion. Tadadaho would have the seat of honor and hold a veto over all the laws which the Council of Nations considered.
Do you know what veto means? Veto means that if you have veto power, then you can say no to what the other people have said. So it's kind of like a vote that holds a little bit more weight.
Including him, the Onondaga would have 14 representatives at the council, more than any other tribe. In terms of the great longhouse that the Peacemaker wanted to build, the Onondaga would be the keepers of the fire. They would have the last vote on all proposals, and council meetings would always be held on their land. Tadadaho's mind spun with the possibilities. Through war,
that was part of the answer.
He had been able to claim more and more power for himself, but nowhere near as much as he stood to gain through this treaty. 4 nations wanted to stand before him and offer him the ability to decide their laws for them. How powerful he would become. While these thoughts were swirling through his head, Jigonsase stepped forward. She hadn't believed that Tadadaho could be reformed, but the Peacemaker did, and she trusted the Peacemaker. Even so,
Wow.
she could see the evil ideas slithering through his mind and knew that she must put a stop to them.
I'm wondering myself, how is this going to work? How are these nations going to be able to work together to get him on their side for the good of all? Because some people are questioning it, but the peacemaker, wow, that's pretty amazing. He kind of has a vision for a brighter future than what some of the leaders of the other tribes might kind of believe in right now. That shows the sign of a really true leader.
She walked straight up to him, looked him in the eye, and ordered him to strike her. Aghast and confused, Tadadaho looked around. Who was this woman to give him orders like this, and such orders? He couldn't strike a woman, especially a clan mother, and he told her so. Is that not what you do? Jigonsase challenged. I've heard many tales of your power, of how you, a powerful man, strike the women in your longhouse, how you make men afraid of you by threatening their lives. Why should you now hesitate to do to me what you have done to so many others? Isn't that what your power is for? Will that not be how you lead our people? Tadadaho bowed his head in shame. Suddenly, he saw all of his plans for what they were, greedy and cruel. He begged for forgiveness. Jigonsase saw that spark of goodness take light in him, and filled with mercy, she ran her hands through his hair and soothed him like a mother soothes her child. Aww. Now that Tadadaho was ready to listen, Hiawatha explained the rest of his proposal. All votes of the council would be unanimous. In effect, they all had veto power, and all the nations would be equal, but Tadadaho would vote last, and as the leader they all looked to, he had a responsibility to use his veto only when he could give a strong reason for his refusal.
Okay, so it wasn't just veto just because for the sake of it, right? He had to have a strong reason behind if he was going to use that. Okay, and that's interesting how all of the votes count for the exact same amount.
Tadadaho agreed, and at last the Onondaga joined the Great Peace. All 5 nations now agreed to peace, but it remained for them to finalize the laws of their new confederacy. Jigonsase, with her knowledge of every nation, sat with the women's councils and decided which of the former war chiefs would now become council representatives. These men were given antlers to represent their new position, and the women who put them there received strings of Hiawatha's wampum beads, signifying the fact that whoever they might choose to sit on the council, the seat itself belonged to the women. All these representatives gathered for the first time on the shores of Onondaga Lake, where the peacemaker awaited them. Before the meeting began, he asked one of the warriors for an arrow from his quiver. Then he held up the arrow and snapped it. "See how easily this breaks?" he told them. Then he asked for a warrior from each of the 5 nations to give him an arrow. Bundling these 5 together, he bent them with all of his strength, but the 5 arrows together held firm. "When we are united," he explained, "we cannot be broken."
Perfect. We're going to stop it there for today. And that gives you a lot of information for how to answer these questions. So again, please remember on your page, you need to show a visual of Hiawatha from yesterday and then the 5 nations, okay? So something kind of like this, or you can use the wampum, or you could even use, like they showed throughout the movie, even just a picture of each of the men, okay? There you go. So hopefully that is great to answer all of these questions, and I will post the questions as well for you to answer. And this is due again tomorrow, so that's Thursday by 1 o'clock. And then we have our last lesson, which is going to be on Tree of Peace, which is the shortest of all of them, tomorrow. Okay, great job, 6A.